So here we are on the front page of Azure DevOps. This is your landing page basically, and the way it's organized is by projects. So you'll see here you get a tab of your most popular projects and then a list of all the projects that you have. And this project contains everything from the code repo to the task boards and the Scrum boards and everything. So you can create a new project from here. I'm just going to quickly go into an existing project before we do that. I'm just going to go into a project here to show you an example. So this is the landing page, and you can completely configure this about page any way you'd like. It's just markup, markdown rather, code that you would use like in a Git README file or something. And on the left-hand side here is where the main menu is the same for all projects. You have your overview. You can set up dashboards. You can set up wikis for the project. The main things I'm going to focus on are these task boards and these repos. There's other things that you can do depending on your subscription level too. In DevOps, there can be other tabs here like testing, and you can set up automated testing cycles as well. But for now, we're going to go to repos, and we're going to just look at this. Is basically for each project in DevOps, you have a Git repo, and up here you can have multiple Git repos per project. So that's something we quite often do. We might have 3 or 4 components in a project with different code bases, and we'll put them together into one project. And then the standard Git rules apply here, meaning that how you set up your branches, here's branches, and how you decide to tag those branches and whatever merging scheme. We'll have a separate video that walks through that and what Stealthix does and recommends. But for now, this is just an existing code base. If I wanted to take this local to do some development, let's say this was a NetSuite project that I wanted to take local and do some changes and then push it back up here. On the right-hand side, we have this clone button. And when it opens up, you have a couple different ways of cloning it. You can clone it directly from the command line and use that URL. And then it also, this is kind of a cool feature, on the fly, it can process and create a password for you to use temporarily, or even a little bit easier even is to just use this clone in VS Code, which you can then open up, and actually it has features for a couple different IDEs. But in VS Code, when I do this, it says, do I want to open this in Visual Studio Code? It then brings up and it asks me what directory do I want to store this in, questions like that. Let me just choose a directory quickly. And it immediately starts. If I go back to my full, you'll see on the bottom right-hand side here, it says, would you like to open this clone directory? Yes, I would open it. And you'll see that it's already, yes, I will trust files in this folder. And you'll see already I have all the files that were there ready to start working on. And we can, in another video where I'll go more through the Git commands and how it's integrated with Visual Studio Code, will make more sense. But for now, we're going to go back to DevOps and we're going to look at a couple more features. So that's how you would store code, and then this code stays updated by branches. And you'll see here we've got a couple branches on this particular project and repo. And there's another feature that you can tie the work for each update and each code change right to these boards on the left-hand side. So if you look here on the left, this boards option has a couple different ways of setting it up. You could just set it up as a general task board, which for some projects, that's all we do. Then you could set it up to have more of a Scrum or a sprint agile approach. And there's ways of setting up reports and even delivery plans where the DevOps platform can take your code all the way to build and deploy and creating build artifacts and things like that. But we're going to just go into work items for this overview. And you'll see here that the main interface is just a list of items that we can filter and we can add. And when we can add many different types of items. And these are based on different ways you like to set it up. So when you're setting up your organization and your projects, you can set a default sort of work style. And this is just a agile style template that we loaded in. We can go through in person through loading one of these in and configuring them. But basically you can set tasks on any different type here: bugs, epics, features, issues. And once they're here, they basically, just like a standard task list, you can assign them, you can estimate effort, things like that. But one of the cool features is you can create these and then use them when you do code merges. So if I go here to my board, for instance, and if I go back here to work items, I'll see that I have update for JSON 792. When I go to do a code merge over here in my repo, I can reference this item and then it will automatically close this item off. So what we've done in some of our other projects, I'll show you a little bit more advanced one. This might be a good one to show. In the task boards, we have many different pull requests that would have items tasked attached to it. So you'll see here, this is a pull request for card changes by one of our developers. And on the right-hand side here, you'll see task 1201 was assigned and he created this branch off of this and the merge. So it's a really good way to set up a clean audit trail between your tasks that get assigned to developers for changes or even new features, and tying them back to actual code commits and merges can be quite helpful. So I'm going to come back out of here for a second. I'm going to go back to the task board to just focus on one more thing. There's quite a lot in this that you can set up and turn into sprints and really use it to manage. It's not in the scope of this video, but you can use this as a Kanban board with tasks that get assigned and they have statuses that can be dragged. But how you use this and set this up is really up to you. It can just be a simple task list, or it can be as complicated as this in sprints. And the more you configure and the more you put into it, the more reporting you can get out of it, so you can get analytics on how much your trends are. We haven't set up everything on this project because this is a fairly new project, but we have set up sprints and iterations, which starts to give us a little bit of reporting on at least our capacity of our developers who are assigned and things like that. So one other thing in DevOps is there's different levels of users. So if I come out here to the main page again, you'll see that on an organization level, I can add people here. I have an organization settings that I can do your typical things. I can set up defaults for projects, and I can set up my billing with Azure. That's one of the first things you set up when you create a new organization, is your billing. And you can tie that to your Active Directory or your cloud Office 365 like we've done at Steltix. Once that's all configured, you can add users at different levels, and these different, I think the free one gives you up to 5 users, and then once you start paying, there's a couple different classes of users, test plans being the most elevated one, I think the most costly. But you can basically here add new users from your Active Directory just by giving the email. You can also add external people who will then get access to whatever project or role you give them. That's helpful if you have outside collaborators committing on some of your repos. Then back on the project level, once the people are configured and the organization is set up, inside of any one of these projects, I can go and add people. And I have a projects setting here, the bottom left, that allows me to do similar things. I can create teams in these projects, which allows me to set different groups of rights. I can have an administration team, for instance. I can add members to that team. I can give them different permissions and eventually assign them to one or more repos. So we divide it up like this between the project team developers that are on the project would have access there, and sometimes QA testers or business analysts who would have to check off the task lists would also be given access. If we come back out, once people are added to the team, there's also ways of configuring, as I said before, the kinds of boards that your team is using. You can also connect this to other external code repositories like GitHub and things like that. And the only final thing I'll say in this overview, we'll go on to more detail in other videos, is just around this artifacts. So you might be creating reusable things in your projects that you want to expose to other projects, or even maybe to other external code systems. So it plugs into NPM here, and you can create your own artifacts out of, so here's some of the NPM SDK packages that we've created, and right from here you can download them, or if you have it configured on the development project, you can also install these with the typical npm I command, and I'll show you that in another video. So this was an overview of DevOps. We'll go into two other more detailed videos here in DevOps before we close the gap.